going to jump into the listing side. So this morning I saw this really, really cool article that I want to share with you all. So, you know, one of the biggest, I guess, for lack of a better word, I'll call it fears that we have as agents is that we wake up one morning and our neighbor next door or across the street or 2 streets over, wherever it happens to be, it's our neighbor. We wake up and for whatever reason, we see a for sale sign in their front yard, and that sign does not have your rider on it. So this article was really, really interesting. So I wanted to share it with you. It's kind of a little tongue in cheek, but that is definitely a fear. And every one of us in this business, if we're doing any amount of business, it's going to happen to us. I hate to say it, but it will happen to us. We do not win 100% of the listings 100% of the time. If you are a wise person who had been in real estate for decades, i.e. my father-in-law told me one time, then you're not in front of enough people. You're not going on enough listing appointments. Julie, as much as you like yourself, not everybody likes you 100% of the time. Ha, ha, ha. So anyway, that was a hard pill to swallow a little bit, but you know, I say this, if I can get 80% of the people, 85% of the people, that's a terrific number to shoot for. But if I'm also not getting 50% of them, then I got to really take a look at what it is that I'm doing. So I'm going to throw this out to the group while we're here. You can just throw some things in the chat if you want, or just shout it out. What do you think you would do if you saw a sign, a for sale sign, whether it's a for sale by owner or another broker's sign, pop up in your neighborhood, whether it's now or a year from now, 5 years from now, while you're still in the business? How do you think you'd handle that? Any thoughts? Find a buyer. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Or take all my buyers, because I've got a lot of them to see that house, no matter where it is they're looking at or whatever their price range is, because yeah. Find a buyer. That's a good one. That is a great one. So definitely a good thing to do. Definitely a good thing to do. I'd go door to door. Okay, Neil, what do you mean you go door to door?
I think sometimes you take your neighbors for granted and you don't really, you say hi and all that kind of stuff, but maybe they're not Facebook friends. Maybe they don't know you from LinkedIn professionally. So I would do, and certainly they know me as teacher, whatever, principal, but I would go door to door and say, obviously I didn't do it before. I'm in the business. If you're looking, if you got friends who are looking, you got people coming in the neighborhood, I have a new gig.
Yeah, which is something you could do anyway. You know, even before a sign goes on the yard, for sure. But I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thing to do. I know there's a lot of you know, there's some conventional wisdom on one side of the door, one side of the aisle that says, you know, good old fashioned door knocking works. And then we've got some on the other side of the door that's going, why do you even bother? It takes up too much time. Here's the newest tech that you can use. As you kind of figured out, we're of a mantra here at Patterson-Schwartz, it's about the relationship. So whatever creates that relationship for you is the best thing to do. You got to do a little bit of both. You got to do it, not just exclusively one versus the other. So thank you for sharing that, both you guys. Okay, I'd find out more about the listing agent, try to determine why they chose them. Okay, yeah, that's great, Kim. Yeah, what is it that made them choose you or them versus you? So that's a great segue into this article. So they talk a lot about that in this article. So I'm just going to share it, and I'll try and print it off. This is from Inman News, so they're a little tough to print off. They print off with a lot of ads and then shoot it over to you later on. But anyway, let me see if I can pull this up here. Let's go here. Aha, here it is. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll just read a little bit of it, not read the whole entire thing, but I think it's a little tongue-in-cheek with some good information here. And again, I'll send it to you. When you print from Inman loves to print all of the ads with it. So it might be a 1.5-page article that turns into 15 pages because of the ads. But anyway, I love Inman. Inman's got some great information. as soon as you become a member of the MLS, you can also sign up for it too. I think it's like $5, something really inexpensive, but has some good information. There's also a lot of ads for a lot of real estate stuff, real estate tools in there. So just try to ignore as much as in there because you'll be bombarded with it. But anyway, so this was written by a retired former brokerage owner, also worked for Zillow Group. So the real estate side of Zillow, retired in 2018, but he's still in the business. So here's the scenario. Bright sunny morning, you open up your front door. It's just beautiful. And what do you see? You see a for sale sign planted in your neighbor's next door yard. Yeah, the same neighbors who've known you for a decade, know that you're a real estate agent, and they know that you're a darn good one. The neighbors you've kept abreast of the real estate market by doing a home value analysis or a real estate review. You've helped fight their property tax assessment, because that's what you do in Pennsylvania. And you go, what the HE double hockey sticks, or a few other words that I can't pronounce right now, is your initial reaction. And then that's followed by, I just talked to them yesterday and they didn't say a word about selling. And then you remember the dozens of conversations that you had over the years include, if we ever sell our home, guess what, Julie, you'll be the first person that we call. WTF indeed. Can't say I haven't thought that on a couple of occasions over the last 17 years. So what do? You stand there staring at the sign. The first reaction might be to cut it down, haha. And then you think,
coming is not locked.
Then you think, what happened? Don't they trust you? Well, of course they do. They've watched each other's children. Did they forget you're an agent? No way. Every time you cross paths, they're always asking you, how's the market looking? So see, there's that question over and over and over again. How's the market? How's the market? It's the first thing out of their mouth, and they're always so warm and friendly to you, so it doesn't make sense. So to Kim's point, I'd want to find out, and that's what this next part is about. So it's an awkward conversation, but what they're saying is you kind of have to have the conversation. So how do you have that awkward conversation? So couple of things. Yep, awkward conversation. Important to remember, no one owes you their business. That's the first thing. No one owes you their business. There may be a very valid reason why they chose another agent, though that would absolutely, as it says here, completely escape me at that point in time. But if you don't ask, you will not find out. That's for sure. So the first thing they recommend is it's not best to immediately pick up the phone while your emotions are really high and churning and ask that question. They tell you relax, calm down, take some deep breaths. What's done is done. The important thing is to go deeper. Doing that today won't change anything. So his recommendation is if it's a neighbor and you're familiar with them, then go talk face to face. I am a big believer in the same thing. I'm always in favor of the face to face via over the phone. Why? Because it's the only way to read that body language. I know the phone is here, but when it comes to important things, face-to-face is important to me. But if you just can't stomach an in-person chat, then go ahead and call them is his recommendation. So, doesn't mean it's default, but if for some reason you're so hurt or your emotions are still high, then go for the phone call. It's about the conversation. But what they don't recommend is text, email, instant message. So be conversational. Don't stomp on their lawn, bang on their door, show your emotions, get professional. So a couple more things. If it's your sister or a relative, and I've had that happen, what I thought was my first listing, my uncle decided to sell it by owner. That was even worse. Didn't even choose an agent, decided to do it himself. So anyway, and their sister across town's listed with someone else. Now's the time to invite her over for coffee. Even that will be awkward. Almost certainly for the both of you, just call and say something like, can you come over sometime? There's something I'd like to talk to you about. They're going to know what it is you want to talk about. In many cases, you may get an immediate dismissal or refusal to talk about it. It's a common defense mechanism because they know why you're calling, and they've probably been planning for it, especially if they know you or they're a relative. You need to kind of put your ego aside, for your business. And then this, I love this dialogue. Like if it's your sister, look, sis, I'm not mad. I'm just confused, but not mad. You may have been mad the day before, but now you're just confused. I need to understand some things that help my business improve. That's the dialogue. That is the dialogue. I really need to understand some things to help my business improve. Can you help me do that? And then what I love is they list all of the various excuses that you may hear. And I have heard 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. Everything from the, I knew you'd be upset, to it's John's sister. It's hard to say no to family, to the, we're friends. I have a hard time sharing my financial information with friends. Let me tell you, if that's a scenario where someone's has to short sale or a bad financial situation and they don't choose you, sometimes I'm like super glad about that because I might not want to know. I might not want to know. And I have really heard this one a ton, and this may work in your favor, guys, right now. Sally's new to real estate. She needs the business. I know you're very successful. One listing really won't change your life, but this will change hers. So believe it or not, new can work to your advantage right now. I've rarely heard this one. I don't think I've heard it at all. Because after that, I'm like, really? Do we really want to be friends? Anyway, that's what I think. That's what I feel. I got to get over that. So I think we have, hold on here. So the article goes on to talk a little bit about how to respond to those difficult situations as you're talking to their neighbors, but plan for the conversation. Couple of key items that are here. Please, 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 please do not ever coach anyone on how to break a listing. Again, I'll repeat, please, please, please do not coach anyone on how to break a listing. You may be tempted to do that if they turn around and say, well, if it doesn't work out, what do I do? If it doesn't work out with a listing agent, what do I do? That's not the time to go into what should you do now, because it just started. What you can say, well, if for some reason it doesn't work out, then give me a call. But right now, that's not to do that. That's really asking for trouble, like it says right here. Lawsuit or license revocation level trouble. It could potentially, it won't with you all because you're not going to handle it in a way that would cause that. And just remember, no listing is ever worth this type of thing. Let me repeat, no listing is ever worth a lawsuit or your license being revoked. It just is not. It might be tempting. Let me see how I can get away from it. I really want that listing. I need the business. I want the business. I really want to work with them. Whatever it is, it's, if you feel like you could dip the toe that crosses the line, take your toe out of that water. Before you do anything, you may want to talk to your manager and say, how do I handle this? But most of the time, they're going to turn around and say, if for some reason it doesn't work out, I'll give you a call. And you go, great. But if they go, if it doesn't work out, what do I do? That's a different question. It's a different question. This could be a good time to note that if you didn't actually lose, remember, you didn't actually lose a listing, you can't lose a listing you never had. They might not have called you in the first place. So then I have to look at and go, well, why is that? That's why you're calling them to find out. And they may have all of these reasons listed up here of why. Why. So, if there isn't a listing agreement or a buyer agency agreement in place, then what do you do there? So there's some situations that they talk about here. And I just caution you, that what they're basically saying here is there are some times where you may not want to work for them. It's really for your own good, just what we talked about. So family and friends, while they're your greatest support, they can also be most tricky. Why? Because you still have to be, well, not necessarily friends, but if it's family, they're still family after the transaction's over. So what happens if it goes south or something happens that's not terrific? So, and think of it this way. Not only can they talk about how great you are, but they also could be at the family barbecue talking about, I can't believe they did that to me. I can't believe they didn't negotiate in my favor. I can't believe. And even more difficult, I love some of these things, is, when you have a listing, you got to go in and tell them that their cat's litter box stinks, or to take all the photos of Aunt Sally and Uncle Steve off, the ones with you in it, if it's family, kind of thing. You have to tell them to take the awards down that they're so proud of. So I'm not saying that you don't list with your family and friends, just understand that it has its own set of concerns that are there too. So I will shoot this article to you. I thought it was just super fun. Yeah, and I see some of your, yeah, TP in their yard. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, Mike. And then sometimes friends and family can be the worst customers. And sometimes you're absolutely right. To sum it all up, it can be a blessing in disguise. But that doesn't mean you don't pick up the phone or walk across the street or just have a conversation with them about, can you just tell me why? Because I'm always looking to improve my business. So it's easy to not do, but I'll tell you, it will burn a hole in your head trying to think, what could you have done differently? I've even done that where I've lost a listing. They're not friends, a little different scenario. I've been on a listing appointment and I didn't get the listing. They were nice enough to call me and leave me a message or shoot me an email to say, thanks so much for coming out last Tuesday. We've decided to choose another agent. That's another phone call to me altogether, where, and I will call. And the interesting thing, I'm about a 50-50 track record when that happens to getting the listing back. Because clearly, I said to him, clearly, I did not answer all of your questions. You still had a concern. So I got about a 50-50 track record on that one, where I'm actually getting the listing back, whether it's after it didn't work out with the first agent or they hadn't signed a listing agreement yet. So always a way to increase or learn a little bit more about your business. So thought I'd share that. I'll shoot it out to you. Forgive me for all of the ads that are in that article, but just some good stuff there, guys. Any questions about that? Good comments. Good comments. Okay, so real quickly, as a consumer, we're going to move on to the listing side. As a consumer, what do you think the process is to sell a house for the consumer? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think the consumer thinks we do as real estate agents, as realtors? What is that process? Like, what do they think we do? If you went to, anybody on the street and says, all right, tell me how listing a house works, what do you think they would say?
I think most of them think we don't do much, and that's why they always want to haggle the commission price. It's just super easy. You just, sign a paper, and next thing you know, the house is sold.
Yeah, in today's market for sure. I'm
hoping
put the sign up.
I'm hoping they at least think that you can attract buyers or potential buyers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in today's market, the listing will attract buyers, period. Most listings, not all. In a buyer's market, that's really what they want to talk about with you, is like, how are you going to market my home, get buyers out there, get buyers into my home. And that's where I was always having a conversation. Don't have it much in this market, but in that market, I was always having a conversation and say, well, three things sell a house: its condition and its location, the price for its condition and its location. So we could have the best conditioned home in the best location ever, and I could fly over a blimp going, buy this house, buy this house, buy this house, throw in maybe just in my bathing suit too in that blimp, and buyers still won't go into the home if the price is not right. In today's world, it's a little bit different. But it's interesting. Have any of you seen or watched on the Flash lately, or saw popping up? I saw yesterday 5 price changes come across in Newcastle County yesterday.
I saw that too.
Did you see that too, Kim?
Yeah, well, one of them, the Woodward one that we were going over as a case study, it dropped price.
Mm-hmm.
Is that before ever going to market?
I didn't really see. I just was really curious as I was, kind of going through my email last night. I'm like, check this out, another price reduction. You're like, why did that pop up again? So that tells me a couple of things, and I got to look to see, are they just coming on? Have they been on the market for a little while? What that situation is. But I know I've even seen a couple in Sussex County where there have been it's been on the market for a week and there's a price change. So there's either concern about the appraisal price or concerned about we missed the mark and not enough buyers coming through. So that's interesting. It's really, really interesting. One I saw that had popped on, it was just condition was, I think, the biggest reason for that one. And they dropped the price really fast because it was clearly needed a lot of work or a tear down, I would say. So anyway, but good views, guys. Yeah, so looking at the flash, watching what's coming on, I saw 5 in Newcastle County. Very, very interesting in today's market. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So yeah, so they think all we do is we get a sign out. You don't have to do much. Put it on. What else? What are some other things you think the consumer thinks we do? If you were to ask them what the process is, what would they tell you? What would they tell you step number 1 is?
Come out and take pictures?
Help you get
Take
the house
pictures,
ready.
yeah. Take pictures.
Stage the house, help you get the house ready.
Stage the house, help you get it ready. Yep, Stephanie, that's another big one.
Determine a price. That would be a good price, to put it on the market for.
Yep.
Market analysis.
Yep, market analysis, determine the price. Yep,
Market the house.
yep, market the house. Get it online for me.
Help you through the whole selling process from start to finish.
Yeah, and I would argue to say, Stephanie, their definition of selling process is different than my definition of selling process. In many cases, their definition is get it on the market, find me a buyer. Find me a buyer.
And show me the money.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, when I think about the selling process, even though in today's world, it's a lot quicker, like people make that decision, move through that process relatively, in most cases, once they make the decision to sell, they move through that relatively quickly. The big thing, and Angie's not here for me to bring that on, is the big thing that I want to know as a listing agent is when do you want to put the house on? Like when do you, and even more so, I want to know when do you want to be handing the keys over to the buyer? Because then I can start working backwards. And literally, probably won't get to it today, but we'll get to it in Monday's session. We'll show you one of the best tips a listing agent ever gave me was to bring out a calendar, good old fashioned paper calendar, and unfold it and walk through with the seller from the time they want to hand over the keys to the buyer, and then walk through it with a calendar backwards. Meaning you're handing it over 45 days from contract to settlement. So let's go back 45 days. Put your home on the, got a buyer. Average day on market right now is 20 days. So let's go 20 days to be on the market. Those kind of things, and see where that takes you to. It could be, it takes you to 3 months from now, or it could be like 3 weeks ago. And so we had to get it on 3 weeks ago. But getting the seller to understand the process, they're just thinking, hey, whenever we get it on, we get it on. We get it on. And it's really about the selling process starts with a conversation about what they're looking to list for. And the selling process really starts with conversations that you're having with people, and then having a process. That's what sellers need to understand, is that there's a process and a lot more to it than staging the home, finding the right price, all getting it on the market, taking some pictures, all of that. So it starts with conversations, continues with a process. Today, we're going to focus in on a couple of parts of that process. The first part of the process I want to talk to you about that I find very critical, whether it's this market, a balanced market, a buyer's market, doesn't matter. But that's the pre-listing interview. So there's two ways that you can, two ways that you have a listing interview where everything takes place there, or you can have a pre-listing two-stepper. That's my favorite way. You'll find lots of agents who do it one way. I have done, a listing like all in one shot too, but how did I figure it out? I figured it out by asking that question somewhere in the initial conversation. When do you want to hand those keys over to the buyer? Because if I have time, I would prefer to kind of set it up a little bit. So to Stephanie's point, really get out there, do a pre-listing interview with them, talk about the reasons why they're thinking about moving. What's the why behind it? What do they need to do to the house to prep it for the market? Some staging tips, things like that. So we're going to talk about the pre-listing interview and some questions that you can be asking and things you can be doing to solidify that relationship in the pre-listing interview. Then we're going to talk a little bit about managing sellers' expectations. And in that particular session, I really want to focus in on the wonderful Zestimate, because they've all been on Zillow and looked to see what their house is worth. They look at it like a grain of salt, but before you go out and do your CMA, understand they've done their own valuation starting at Zillow. So I like to find out what that is at first and have a conversation with them about Zillow. And I've even used the Zillow Zestimate as a comp. The appraiser's not, but it's in the mind of the seller. And then we're gonna finish off, because here's what I think, why I asked the question, what do you think the consumer thinks we do? What we need to do in that pre-listing interview or some of those initial conversations is to really show the seller the value of what we bring to the table. And where I find the biggest value that agents bring to the table is to educate the seller that we have a process. We have a process to get you to Florida by February, in my cousin's case, to Florida by February. I've got a process, that it's a process. And there's something about having a process, when you talk about a process, that not only adds value, but it gives confidence in the seller that it's just not, willy-nilly. It's just not willy-nilly. People feel more confident in someone who has a process versus someone who's just going to say, well, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. It's how you explain the process. So I'll show you that particular video and show you 5 ways to show your value to the seller in the initial process. So processes are huge for both buyers and sellers. They're huge. They're huge. Most of the time, as we learned on the buyer side, we go out and we start talking about, 3-bedroom. What are you looking for? Where are you looking to go? What price range are you in? And there's a great conversation to have at first, but it's also about educating them as to what the process is. Setting them up. When we go to tour, here's what's going to happen, blah, 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 blah. So any questions about that? Any questions? Okay. Curious, you don't have to say it here, but think back on the times that you sold your house in the past, whether it was recently or you were involved in the sale of a property. Like, did someone go through a process or explain a process to you? Because most agents don't. Most agents don't. So that'll just give you a heads up right from the beginning as we explain the process to the seller. So I'm going to start with the pre-listing interview. Again, I'm a big fan of a 2-stepper if I have the time, if the seller has the time. If the seller wants it on the market like last week, I probably don't have the time. I got to speed that up a little bit. If I do have the time where they're not looking to put it on, say, until September or maybe a month from now, then I have some time. I absolutely have some time. So there's some questions in that pre-listing interview that I'm going to ask them. Some may be on the phone in the initial conversation. Some may be actually in the pre-listing interview. Why I like that is because it gives me a chance to establish rapport with the seller, hear what their goals are, explain the process to them, kind of take control of that process with them. Number two, and then, there's time to get the house ready. We may not have all the time in the world, but there's time to talk about it and really educate them as to what their needs are. That's one of the ways we definitely show some value. But again, it can all be done in one spot, but I like to. The other reason I like to is because if you're asking me to price a home in today's market, a little bit easier because the price is kind of, here's where the last one sold. Let's just add $10,000 to that because that's where that next one's going to sell. It's a little kind of crazy right now, but I want you guys to learn, not just today. I want you to learn what will carry you through your whole entire real estate career. So if you're doing that CMA and you're looking back and you're looking at, what is sold, well, okay, if it's sold at 350, I could probably do it at 360, 365 because prices are just rising. Similar homes, similar location. But, again, look at it. I wouldn't lose a listing over pricing it. If the seller wants to price it at 365, but on the flip side, I've seen some price reductions here too recently. So again, something to watch for. So that's why in your comps, you're not only looking for what is sold, but what's active and what's been happening from an active standpoint, or what just pended. Did it go on at a price and then pended at, change prices and then pended? So like the one on Woodward, Wood Creek, excuse me. Yeah, what happened there? So really looking at that. Two, I like to look at the home. So in pretty much all markets, I go into the home, I want to look at it. Like, what are some of the updates they've done in the last 5 years? Is it truly, when I look at the comps and the subject property, are they truly comparable? Yes, we finished the basement. Well, there's all kinds of different finished basements. There's the tricked out with the movie theater and the 15 seats for the family behind it and the wet bar over on the side. And then there's, the handyman special kind of thing. None are bad. Still a finished basement, but all a little bit different. So let me just go through a really, really quick, give me a quick second here to pull this up. Overview for you all on the listing process. I just gotta find it. Okay, let's make sure it pops up here. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see that? The dog popping out of the
Yes.
box. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about seller orientation, which is pretty much guiding your sellers through the process. So here we go, full screen for y'all. So guiding them through the process, how to exceed expectations, giving some excellent service. So here's essentially the listing process. So you're getting the initial call, having that initial meeting. You may have a follow-up meeting with or the formal listing presentation, and then servicing your listing. So there, believe it or not, there is a time where homes stay on the market more than 2 days. So that requires some servicing of your listing to go on. Here's some information that you want to gather. When I get into the pre-listing interview, I'm going to break this down to even more specific questions. But in general, you're looking at their name, the address of the seller and the property. Remember, the seller might not live in the property. Repeat, the seller may not live in the property. Maybe an investment property. It may be someone has passed away in the family and they're the executor of the estate, or the person who has been deemed to sell the property. So make sure you get both. You want to get some good email addresses and phone numbers. Ask them, have you been watching what's going on in the market lately in your neighborhood or in the neighborhood? Yeah, they have been. That's where that Zestimate comes in at. And I'll ask them that question. Have you gone on Zillow to see what the Zestimate is? And it's funny today, a lot of them know they're not super accurate. They know that now. Or I've heard a couple where they say, yeah, guess what? You know, it says my house is worth, Zillow says my house is worth 475. No way. No way. I just had that conversation with a neighbor of mine a couple of weeks ago. What style home do they have? Is it a townhouse? Is it a condo? Is it a split? Is it a ranch? Is it a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath colonial, which we have plenty of them here in the state? Number of bedrooms and baths. Do they have a basement? Is it finished? Do they have a garage? 2-car, 1-car, 3-car, separate from the house? Any updates within the last 5 years? Again, I repeat, the last 5 years. Why do I say that? I learned this question the hard way. I walked into a house, possible listing. It was in Trolley Square. I'm talking to the gentleman and I ask him, any updates to the home? And he takes me to this really small bathroom off the back of the home that he put in 1975. It was the size of the kind you get in cruise ships or the airplane bathroom. Well, I wasn't looking for that update. Within the last 5 years are updates that are going to be meaningful to buyers. Again, reason for selling. Are they relocating? So do they need the assistance of a relocation service? They may. They may be working with one. They may say to you, yes, we've already, my employer has a relocation service. We're probably part of that network. So make sure you let them know that. Not so much in this market, but important in a balanced market or a buyer's market. Has the home been on the market before? You can pretty much find that by going on the MLS, something that I would look for if before going out and just see what happens. And then I always want to know, like, how do they hear about me? Now, if it's my cousin, clearly, hello. Or if it's a neighbor, clearly, hello. But if it's not, if someone new, ask them, because that tells me a little bit about what marketing is working for me. So Chris Cashman will tell you this all of the time. What is a bona fide listing appointment? Here's when you have one. Do you have enough information to perform a CMA? If you don't, that's where the pre-list comes in, or, before you go out with a CMA showing all of the comps out there, you want to make sure you have enough information. That's why I like a pre-list. Are all the sellers or seller who want to sell, do they all want to sell this property? That's a tricky one if you're selling a property of, say, a family member. You might have the brother who lives in California who doesn't want to sell it just yet. Had a situation where I got called out to see a property. Mom was on, get a load of this. Mom was visiting one of the grandchildren. And granted, I see why they were thinking this way. Mom was getting a little advanced in years. They were very concerned about her being alone. So they had me all out there to take a look at the property in hopes of selling it. But mom wasn't there. And guess who's on the deed? Mom. So the decision maker wasn't there. Wasn't there. Decision maker wasn't there. So come to, do all this work, come all the way out there for a listing appointment, talk all about it, and made the mistake of talking all about, how we're going to list it, pricing it, what they might want to do to stage the property, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm like, so, I was like, your mom's not here. Mrs. Kelly is not here yet. Mom's not here. Yeah, she's out visiting so-and-so. Well, is she on board with this? Well, we're going to talk to her when she gets back. Hello. So decision makers are present. Remember, the decision maker isn't always the owner necessarily. My example right now is not a good example of that, but remember, isn't always the owner. Always ask, are you the sole person making the decision to sell this house? Ask that question sooner rather than later. If it's an estate type of situation, just because they're the executor of the estate doesn't mean that they have the sole permission to sell the property. Let me repeat, just because they're the executor of the estate doesn't mean they have the sole permission to sell the property. You may want to find out who the estate's attorney is at that point in time, a copy of the will, and see exactly what it says. Ask the state's attorney, does the executor sitting there and saying, yeah, I'm the person who gets to sell the property. That's when I'm talking to the state's attorney and saying, are there brothers and sisters, like anybody else in there who is also in this decision-making process? Do you have an idea of what the sellers think the house is worth? In that initial phone call, that's a great question to ask them. Like, have you been watching what's going on in the neighborhood? Or what Zillow say about your house? And do you have enough time set aside to actually present a CMA and go through a presentation? If you only have 15 minutes, that's not enough time. It just isn't. So if they want you to come out and talk about it, then come out and talk about it, but it might only be a 30-minute conversation in which you have to come back and actually present your CMA. So, all right, so the pre-listing appointment. What is it? When and where does it happen? What do I bring? Do I bring a pre-listing book, etc.? So here's a stat, or a fact, I should say. Top agents send a pre-listing packet before they go out on the listing appointment. So it's kind of like having a buyer packet together. You will have a listing packet together. I'm going to stop sharing this for a second and go into, where am I going to go? I'm going to go into this. Here we go. Going to go into PSAtNet here. What do you put in a listing packet? Most of what you can find in a listing packet can be found. Can everybody see this? Can be found in pricing presentations right here. So reports, pricing presentations. Notice I didn't go to CMA. And we'll talk about why in a minute, because, well, I'm going to talk about it now. Never mind. We want to start huge. So meaning, think of it like a funnel. I'll draw my crude funnel here. If I had a whiteboard, I'd be drawing my crude funnel in front of me. Think of it like a funnel. I want to start relatively wide and then come narrow down into the neighborhood. Many times what we do is we want to go boom right into a CMA and start with the neighborhood. I don't know if I'm there yet. So whether I'm going into a pre-listing appointment or I'm going on my listing appointment, I'm going to send some kind of packet. In here is some information that you can send to your sellers right here, all kind of listed right here. Things to consider if you're selling a home. This is from Keeping Current Matters, one of my favorite reads.
Did she freeze for everyone?
She froze for me.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
Julie, we can't hear you.
I'm gonna check on her.
Dang it. You guys there?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we all froze for some reason. Thank you. All right, probably because I got too many things up. All right, so can everybody see this now? Yeah, so I'm going to get out of it because it's probably what's freezing us. It's a large document. We get this from, again, Keeping Current Matters. You can find it in pricing presentations. If you're talking to anybody who's even remotely thinking about selling a home, it's a great tool piece to send to them. So we brand it to us here at Patterson-Schwartz. There's a new edition that comes out every quarter. Lots of good broad information, why you shouldn't wait to sell your house, what's happening in the current housing, low inventory is a win for sellers, what is 21 and a half home prices. So it's going to talk about things more nationally, broken down also regionally. Always a piece in there about it pays to sell with a real estate agent. So a little plug for us, always in there. And still why pricing your house matters. So what it does is it starts to educate the sellers before you've even walked in the door. It's what I love about it. So there's also a nice little piece in here about pricing your home to sell. Let's see if I freeze again. No, I didn't. Yay. So again, starting to have a conversation about price, you know, what determines list price, because the way the market determines it is different than the way they may determine it. So again, I love to have that piece ready to go. And then I also might, whoops, hang on guys. Isn't where I wanted to go. Okay. I also might do, whoops, add a market watch report in there. So just, I'm using custom here. Let's say my home is in Middletown somewhere. I can put a custom market watch report together just to show them what's going on in the market right now. Get that out to them in the pre-listing packet. And again, I'm sending this to them. I could overnight it to them. You know, I could drop it off to their house. If you've never met them before and you're 30 minutes away from the listing, I highly recommend you put this together, get in your car, drive it over there, put your mask on, knock on the door, drop off your pre-listing packet and say, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I'm Julie. I know you haven't met me yet. I'm really looking forward to our meeting on Saturday morning. Just wanted to drop off a little bit of information to you before our meeting. Looking forward to it. You want to talk about making a great first impression? So I go back to why do top listing agents send a pre-listing packet before they arrive? Because they're already starting to market themselves, set themselves apart from everybody else just that way. If I'm greater than a half an hour, okay, I might overnight it or FedEx it. Or if I really want the listing, then I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive it there. Now, if I'm here in Hockessin and down the beach, yeah. Can you send it email? Sure. Does it have as much of an impact? Heck no. Heck no. So some things again to provide in that pre-listing packet. Again, or why? Pre-sell the agent before they arrive, educating the seller on the home selling process because clearly there's a difference. It also speeds up the listing process and reduces the time at the appointment. So when you actually get to the appointment, you know, I asked the question, have you read my, did you read the information in my pre-listing packet? Some say yes, some say no. Some, yeah, I got halfway through it. Doesn't matter. Just want to remind them that it's there. You may also, depending upon their time frame, like if they are looking to list relatively quickly, like it's May now, they want to list June 1, then I may put their seller homework in there. So that's the forms they need to list the house, meaning the disclosures. So the seller's disclosure, the lead-based paint disclosure, the radon disclosure, those types of things. I do not put a copy of the listing agreement in there. I repeat, I do not put a copy of the listing agreement in there. You will find some folks who do. I don't. Why? Because I don't want them reading it without me educating them on it. I want to educate them on it. I want to walk through the listing agreement with them. I want them to understand what each of those paragraphs means. That's a Julie thing. You can do what you want. You'll hear arguments on the other side from a lot of folks. I just don't do it as a part of my practice. And then I would recommend at this point in time, if I was new, not to do it right away either. You'll feel much more comfortable explaining it to them, and it gives you time to practice it too. So why again distinguish you from the rest of the competition in case you are in competition? It's a great way to gain commitment from the seller, and it shows the seller that you're a professional and that you're an expert. Again, go back. Why do top agents send a pre-listing packet? That's why. That's why. You guys are all top agents. That's what you're going to do. We know the result is more sellers sign up with that agent who sends a pre-listing packet. We just do. So make it a part of what it is that you do. Again, how do they send it? When does it arrive? Just a couple of things there. What's inside it? So just showed you a couple of tools, a couple of things you can put in there. You may put together your own little confirmation letter that you put in there, or maybe a handwritten note saying, looking forward to meeting you on Saturday afternoon. Some people will drop off the pre-listing packet and then follow it with a quick video text or an email saying, I dropped this off to you last night. Sorry I didn't get an opportunity to meet with you or introduce myself. I'm so looking forward to Saturday. The home selling process is filled out. You might put some tips in there for preparing the home. That was in both of those things are in the Keeping Current Matters brochure. I just showed you that froze everything up. Any testimonials that you have from past clients, you can get those as you start to get those into play. You can have them printed off, and or you can put them in the CMA. So that's where you would use that, just that little portion of the CMA. Show your marketing plan, importance of pricing correctly. So all of these things you may use. They're not totally inclusive of what you may use. You may only use a couple of them, figure it out. Not every one looks exactly the same, except for the fact I will say, I do put market information in there. I do put that KCM information in there. That absolutely goes in there. My testimonials are going in there. And then the home selling process spelled out goes in there pretty much all the time. And also the performance promise and guarantee. So meaning, in the CMA, there is a section in there that talks about the Patterson-Schwartz promise. Essentially, the Patterson-Schwartz promise is if for some reason you're not happy with anything that we do, an email, a phone call, whatever to you or me, we will remove the property from the market. No ifs, ands, or buts. I've only had that happen one time in 17 years. And let me tell you, I was kind of glad she did it. And she did it in such a dramatic way. Instead of an email or phone call, she came directly to the office with all of the information that I had left in the house and my rider. And she came in, and our poor receptionist, Sandy at the time, she came in and literally threw it at her. So that was her way of telling me she didn't want to list anymore. But I will also share with you, there were major issues going on there, major issues that were well beyond selling the house. So again, what's inside of the pre-listing packet? We just talked about it. Again, get it out as soon as possible. It will speed up the process and get faster agreement at the appointment for sure. When you get to the appointment, and your initial meeting, you're going to want to take a tour. Actually, they're going to want to take you on a tour in most cases. So when you're going on that tour, what are you looking for? You're looking for improvements and updates to the property, again, within the last 5 years, looking for those staging opportunities, Stephanie, that you had mentioned earlier. You're also looking for potential issues that could hinder the sale of the house. So they could be things like mold, or stucco, if you happen to be up in PA, clutter, water and dampness, finished basements without egress. Oh, did I freeze again? No?
No.
Okay. That's all I've got. So all of these kinds of things that you're going to be able to look at. I'm not going to get into all of these things right now, but they're things you want to learn about. We talk a lot about them at sales meetings, especially when in sales meetings, they'll bring in like a mold specialist to talk about it. You know, stucco, what's the issue with stucco? You may even heard if you were in class for pre-licensing, I'm sure there was a conversation about it. You know, clutter is just, it's clutter. We don't live in a house like we sell a house. Water and dampness, and then the finished basements without egress. Again, not going to get too much into that, but definitely something that you want to take some time to learn about. I'm sure Dave's going to talk a little bit about all of these tomorrow when he starts chatting about the seller's disclosure. So, all right, now it froze this way. Okay. So again, you want to spend some time developing rapport with them, especially if you're meeting them for the first time. Dropping off your pre-listing packet really helps kind of get over that initial meeting. But again, what are their motivations, timeframes, what price range are they thinking about? So you may have talked about any of these over the phone with them, but it doesn't hurt to sit down again and go back over it with them. Maybe you just talked to Mr. Seller and now you got Mr. and Mrs. Seller at the kitchen table. Right? So if you have her motivation may be very different than his motivation. Okay, just sorry about that. Look, I saw that popped up. So again, it doesn't take long to go through, but just real quickly. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just want to review some of my notes from our conversation the other day. So it looks like you guys are looking to sell to move down to the beach. How exciting, is that right? And you're looking for 2 nods. If you only see 1 nod, then now someone might not be motivated yet to sell. What are their time frames? So, you know, so when you're looking to be down there and get the keys to your new beach house, like start with the end goal in mind and work backwards. Have you been watching what's going on in your neighborhood? Tell me a little bit about how you feel your house can be best marketed. You might ask them about their past home selling experience. So I understand this is not your first time selling a house. Tell me about your past selling experiences. What worked, what didn't work? And then any other expectations, comments, or concerns.
Hey, Julie,
Yes.
should we be seeing the Market Watch screen or should we be seeing your PowerPoint right now?
The PowerPoint. So you're not
Oh,
seeing that, right?
I think that's what she meant. I realized that.
Okay,
afterwards.
thank you.
Yep.
Let me go back. Can you see it says competitive market analysis now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Well, now it's working. Of course it's working. Thank you for telling me. So again, I'll just run through this initial meeting, developing your rapport. What all these questions you might want to sit down, go over again at the kitchen table with them. Why? Main reason why is number 1, you might have only talked to one of the parties. Now all the parties are there because you have a bona fide listing appointment. So it might sound redundant. It may feel redundant to you. Let me tell you, it saves you a lot of headaches on the back end. All right, so the CMA, not going to go through a ton here right now. But again, what are you looking to use in the CMA when you get to that point? You're using sold and pending comparables from the last 6 months. You want to find your current competition and include it. So that means the active properties. Why? Because that's what buyers are looking at. They're just not looking at the neighborhood. They're looking in a wider swath, especially right now, since there's not that many homes on the market right now. Always supplement your findings in the CMA with market watch and pricing presentations. That's just where we were at in PSAtNet. And just a couple points to remember when researching your competition, your comparables. You want to keep your comparables to about minimum 5 properties, maximum 10 to 12. 8 is really good. Anything more than that, it just gets confusing for the seller and for me. If you see a wide variety of comps in there, so I think Angie had asked this question a couple of weeks ago, or last week sometime, a couple of days ago. She had a wide swath of comps in this neighborhood because condition was a big factor in this neighborhood. All the same type of home, but the conditions were everything from Ethan Allen showroom to, and could possibly be a total gut and redo. So if you have some highs and lows that are kind of outside the middle, take out the high, take out the low, use the middle. Okay, you don't have to use, if they're so far, again, in her particular case, she had, if I remember right, and I hope she doesn't mind me using this, she had anywhere from $55,000 up to $155,000 for this particular neighborhood. Yeah, wow, exactly right, Neil. So when we took the 55 out and the 155 out, we had a much better range of comps. Now, she didn't know that until she went and visited the property. That was the challenge. So she did a two-step, went and looked at the property, saw that it was kind of middle of the range in there. Definitely some great updates, some things that, probably needed to be updated that she recommended to them. So she took out the high, took out the low, and used the comps in between. That gave her, instead of 15 comps, it gave her 10 comps. Much more easy to manage.
Julie, I have a question.
Yes, Kim.
I actually kind of have a two-part question when it comes to setting prices. So if you're looking at comparables, and in this market, people are paying more than the asking, sometimes having to bring cash to closing because it's not appraising for it. How do you balance what things are selling if they're selling above the appraised value? And also, at what point do you think the appraised values, how long would the market have to be like this for the appraised values to actually start coming up to meet what people are paying?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay.
No, I don't know. It's very tricky to price a property right now. Very, very tricky to price a property. So the best way to go about it is to look at the data, because that's essentially what the appraiser is going to use. Depending upon the neighborhood, you could have a situation like Wood Creek, I'll use that one as an example, where things were going up and up and up. And then all of a sudden we've got this one where the prices kind of come down after listing. So you really, Kim, and I may not be answering your question fully, you really got to watch what's going on with it. So that's going to lead me to, remember Sal said last Thursday, like practice, practice, practice. Sal said, show your manager. I'm going to go with listing. Any listing that you get, I want you to review the comps with your manager. Pricing is an absolute art. And in this market, Kim, it's even more of an art. So I feel like Bill Ward when I say it kind of depends. Like I've got to really see what's going on and really look and research my comps. This isn't something that you just kind of go in, you pull up property search, and you pull off what's in the neighborhood. I mean, you really gotta look at it. It could depend upon, do I have a house that has, like my neighborhood at the beach, it's got a combination of all different kinds of houses in there, to, Limestone Hills West that has single family homes and townhouses in there. Do I have ranches and colonials? Because the appraiser is going to look at, if it's a ranch home, the appraiser is going to look at the ranch home and what ranches in the area are selling at. So then what are they selling at? And do I up the price? Do I lower the price? Where am I at? So it's a very unique time right now, Kim, in the market. The pricing skill comes with practice. It just kind of does. You start to learn these little nuances. What I'm giving you right here are just some basics. But again, I encourage you guys get a listing. I want you to work with your managers on it. They're going to know little nuances about the neighborhoods that you might not know just yet, or what's going on in the market from what they've heard from agents who are in the market, or issues that they're dealing with right now. So I know I didn't answer your question with an exact response. So I'm just kind of make it, there's lots of factors that come into play. Your best bet is to look at the comps, educate your seller, on what may happen, that, yeah, we could probably push the price. Don't ever turn down, I'm going to tell you in this market, I would never tell you in any other market this, but don't ever turn down an overpriced listing unless you think it's like way out of whack. What I mean by that is you think the price is around $425 and they want to list it for $550. You don't see a comp anywhere to prove it unless they're the largest house in the neighborhood or unique house in the neighborhood or whatever. I had one of those in my old neighborhood in Breckenridge. We had a farmhouse. Everybody else was 2-story colonials, 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath colonials. Every one of us, varying sizes. But up comes the listing appointment at the farmhouse. I can't say I can't. I had to look, am I using both the farmhouse and am I looking at other farmhouses plus what's going on in the neighborhood? It got a little tricky. If you're in an area that it's not a neighborhood, it can get a little tricky. So Ike, you're down in that Dover area. We've got lots of onesie, twosie places that sit on, Bailey's Farm Road, or it's a one-streeter that doesn't have a lot of comps around it. So Dover has lots of rural areas in Delaware have lots of those things. Newcastle County, woohoo! Southern Chester County, a little bit easier because we've got a lot of neighborhoods that make the comps just a little bit easier. Sussex County, same thing. If I'm kind of 5 miles from the beach area, a lot of neighborhoods. But the minute I get west of 5 miles from the beach area, now I've got a lot of onesie twosie streets. So a little bit different. So again, I don't want to get into a ton of, we can spend all kinds of time on pricing. I know Dave did a session last month. He and Juan did a session on pricing. I want you guys to go back and watch it. But bottom line, your first, just like Sal said, your first 4 to 5 listings. And if you're not doing them right in a row, writing an agreement of sale, you're probably going to do a lot more practice with writing agreement sale more frequently. With a listing, you may have a listing in May, but you might not get your next one until July. So work with your managers on that they don't happen every week or even every month, especially as you're new to this business. But work absolutely with your managers on that. When you work with them, tell them I've got a list, I got a listing on 1-2 Banana Street in whatever neighborhood. Pull the comps, pull what you think are the comps, bring them to the meeting with your manager and then review them, because that'll tell you, are you kind of where your thinking is. You might be on the right track. You might need to take into consideration a couple more things. So work with your manager on that. Sorry, Kim. A really good answer to that question. Watch this. I know that question came up in that session with Juan and Dave last month, that manager minute session. So go back and watch that again. It's a tough one right now. It's a tough one. And you just got to educate them that it may not appraise. But here's the other thing. We've got people who are writing agreements of sale saying, we'll make up the difference if it doesn't appraise. Such a fun time. Okay. The listing packet. Here's what you want to have in that listing packet. So you might have already given it in your pre-list packet. That's okay. Sometimes I give it again in case they made a mistake with the disclosures. Some people fill them online. You can send the disclosures online too as a fillable form. And again, some things here. I like to have a what happens next. That's actually a sheet in the CMA buried really deep into the CMA. So one of the things I want you to remember is that CMA, you can pull pieces out of that CMA that relate to where you happen to be at. You don't have to use the full CMA in its current state. You don't have to use all of it. You can pull pieces out of it, individual pieces out of it to customize it. I highly recommend that. Again, Sue Kennedy went through that in April's Tech Talk, how to do that. So when you're marketing your listings, here are some places that you will market your listings. This is spelled out in detail in the CMA. Got an automatic virtual tour that happens when the home hits the market. You can do brochures inside the property. I see some folks doing just one brochure in the property. I have seen folks using a QR code so that, you know, just like the menus in restaurants now. Spacio is a great way of doing that. With any Patterson-Schwartz listing, the listing itself gets its own website. And then, of course, you want to share it on your own personal website too. Again, not going to go through this too much here, but each listing, you will put together a marketing service report. What's a marketing service report? It is a report that goes out to the seller. Let's see if I can get into this really fast here. Okay, everybody see that? I'm in PS.net right now. And it goes, let's say, under manage listings. Let's see if I have my one from last one. So here's can everybody see this? This is a copy of the marketing service report. So if I go under manage listings, it'll take me to all of my listings. And this pulls up the marketing service report. We sold this home in one day, literally a day. The market service report you can send out to your sellers on a daily basis. I recommend once a week in this market. If it's a buyer's market or a balanced market, I'd send it out twice a week. What it does, and it's not going to show too many of them here, so I'm sorry about that, but because we sold it so fast, it shows everywhere somebody's looked up the property online, even on Zillow, and then any feedback that I've received from showings will show up here too. This property, unfortunately, well, unfortunately for us right now, it was shown like literally sight unseen. So we listed it, had someone in the neighborhood who wanted to see it, and we got it out there. I called an agent up. She just went out right to see it before we could even she could make the appointment. She was literally showing another property down the street, and they bought it. They literally wrote the contract on the, right there in that driveway, right there, right there. So not the best example, but my point is there is a marketing service report that's out there. That is something that you'll set up with your listings. Good so far? A lot of information, I know. I know. All right. Probably not happening in this market so much, but certainly in, can everybody see that? I'm back to the PowerPoint.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay, hang on. Oh. Back to you guys, share my screen. Where'd it go? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Should be a chart. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go back here. Thank you. All right. Not so much in this market, but certainly in a more of a balanced market, you might want to set up a follow-up meeting. So meaning, you know, the home's not going to sell, right away. All right, we're putting it on the market on Tuesday and we'll review all offers on Thursday. That's our market today. But let's say it's the type of property that would take some time to sell. There still are some of those on the market. They're usually very unique properties. So you want to make sure you're setting up some follow-up meetings with them and then setting expectations with them on the number of showings they should have, any price reductions when they should have, or when you're going to review any changes in the market. Now, I share this with you because the market will turn at some point in time. These are some things you're going to need to incorporate into your listing presentations. Okay. All right, some listing humor. So we talked about 7 core seller skills, counseling, you're in the middle of it, pricing, what the heck do I price it for? Staging, yeah, you may have to move some furniture, probably why my back hurts every now and then. Marketing. You're also in negotiation, transaction management, and communication. So I shared this with you because I loved to use this particular cartoon to explain what we do as a listing agent. A little tongue-in-cheek way of doing it. So what people forget is this part, the transaction management part. So I always say, especially to folks who are asking about commission, I always say, I really don't earn my salt. I don't earn my living really in today's world from getting the home on the market. That's a part of it for sure. But where you're really going to see value in what I bring to the table is in this part, is getting it from pending to the settlement table. That's really where we earn our salt. Really where we earn our salt. So just a little tongue in cheek, some information about those types of things again. So questions, comments, thoughts, concerns. Lamp just fell down. A lot. So there's a lot that we do. There is a lot that we do, but remember, it starts off with conversations, works into that process. How that process, works or plays out is really a function of the seller's needs, how the market is, those types of things. But definitely there's a process. There's a process. So let's, if you don't have any other questions, I'm kind of looking the same, I'm going to jump into the pre-listing interview. So let's start with that part of the process here. Screen and we'll get to watch a little video if I can get to it. Here we go. Gotta find it in the library. Here we go. Okay. Where's the video? Was here this morning. Try this again. Can I go by it? Aha, here it is. There it is. Okay, we good? Let me know, thumbs up if you hear it.
Hello and welcome to the Ninja Path. My name is Larry Kendall. I'm the author of Ninja Selling, and our goal is to help you increase your income per hour so that you can have a life. We do that by helping you focus on your 3 success keys: your mindset, your skill set, and your actions. This lesson is a ninja skill set lesson on the pre-listing interview. The pre-listing interview is very important. Let's say when the phone rings and somebody on the other end says, "Hi, you don't know me, but we have a mutual friend and they suggested I give you a call. I'd like to talk to you about selling my house." What do you do? Well, what most realtors do is they immediately make an appointment and go out and look at the house. What we would recommend that you do is take a moment before you make an appointment to look at the house and collect some basic information. We call this the pre-listing interview. So it sounds something like this. You would talk about the mutual friend and build the rapport, and then you would say, you know what I'd like to do is set up a time for us to get together. And to help me prepare for that meeting, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Is this an okay time? And they'll say, well, sure. Usually it is because they called us. In that first 2 minutes, we want to connect with them, we want to build rapport, and then we want to take control of the process. You have just taken control of that process by asking, can I ask you a few questions? The purpose of this pre-listing interview is to first examine the patient and find out what is their situation before going in to do surgery. The patient is the seller, not the house. See, the most important factor in selling a home is, do you have a seller who can make good decisions? So often we get distracted by looking at the bricks and the sticks. You know, how many bedrooms, how many baths, square footage, condition of the house, and so on. All of that is important. But what we also want to do is size up our seller. What are some of the decisions the seller makes? Who decides on the price? Well, ultimately the price is decided in the marketplace through negotiation, but the seller decides the list price. Who determines the condition? How about the availability to show the property? And what about acceptance of a contract? And a really big decision, who picks the realtor? You see, the seller makes the important decisions. So what we know in Ninja is this: the patient is the seller, not the home. And top selling ninjas don't list homes, we list sellers.
Okay, catch that? It's kind of like, think about it when this pre-listing interview is like when you go in, you're speaking to the doctor's asking you about your symptoms, what's going on, how long have you been feeling this? It's a lot of questions. And what most agents do in today's world is they start asking questions over the phone about, well, tell me about your house. Is it 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, you know? And I'm not saying not to have that conversation, but let's start with what's going on in the seller's mind, what's happening in their life. Most people don't buy or sell a home because it's a fun thing to do. They buy or sell a home because something's going on in their life that precipitates them to have to sell the home or buy a home. So keep that in mind. Let's start with the reason that they're looking to sell. And we don't list homes, we list the sellers. Once we kind of move on to what's going on with the seller, not the home, if we focus in on the seller, not the home, we're developing that rapport, and that's when we're winning the listing.
So it's very important to assess your seller. You know, what are their expectations? Are they realistic or unrealistic? If they're unrealistic, can we help them to become more realistic? What is their motivation? Do they have what we call a gap? There's a difference between where they are and where they want to be and a time frame. What is their level of experience? Have they ever sold a home before? How cooperative are they? Do you sense that you're on the same team, or does it feel like they're fighting us?
Believe it or not, every seller isn't always hunky-dory. Always hunky-dory. So, and even, so I'll use this one as an example. I had someone who sold a home neighborhood next to me up here in Newcastle County. The owner was mom, but guess who else lived in the home with mom? The adult son. So mom's on the deed, but guess who's a part of the decision-making process? The adult son. Guess who didn't want the home to be sold? Because someone was going to be homeless. So just keep, that was a very, mom was great. Son, tough. If I heard every 5 minutes, mom doesn't have to sell this home, mom doesn't have to sell this home, mom doesn't have to give the home away. If I had $1 for every time the son said that to me, I wouldn't be teaching you all today. I'd be sitting in Florida or somewhere else, nice and warm. So keep that in mind. Let's go back to, here we go. Go back to Larry. How cooperative are they?
On this relationship, what about their communication and their personality? Are they open and honest in their communication, or are there some sort of hidden agendas? And then finally, we have to take a look at the home itself. The bedrooms, the bathrooms, the square footage, and the condition of the home. In your pre-listing interview, there are 22 questions. We're not going to have time to go through all of those 22 questions on this video, but you have the handout. And at the end of the video, we would recommend that you get very comfortable asking those 22 questions. I want to cover some of the highlights on some of those questions. The purpose of this pre-listing interview, number one, is to build rapport with your seller and to take control of the process. That's really accomplished in that first 11 questions. Those are what we call foundational questions. It builds a foundation of rapport and trust with your seller. Question number 9 in there is about updating. And one of the questions you ask is, how long have you lived in the home and have you done any updating to it? If they've done no updating, it gives you a pretty good idea of the condition of the home. Question number 10 is, if you were to live in this home another 5 years, is there anything you would do to it? And if they say things like, yeah, we would do new paint, new carpet, new countertops, it tells you pretty much those things that a buyer maybe would want to have done before they buy the house. Question number 11 asks them to look at their home through what we call buyer eyes. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's in show home condition, 1 being it's more of a fixer-upper condition, how would you rate your house? And what would it take for it to be a 10? Again, whatever they list, those are things probably the buyer's going to want to have done as well, or at least reflected in the price. Asking these questions up front gives you a really good idea of the condition of that property. Again, we're examining the patient. We're not going to perform surgery. So we just ask the question, write the answer, go to the next question. Ninjas often ask me about question number 12. What are you going to be asking for the property? Or question number 13, do you own the property free and clear? Or will you be getting a loan? Sometimes they say they would be uncomfortable asking that question. Those 2 questions really are optional. It's important, I think, on question number 12, what are you asking for the property? Or what are you going to be asking for the property, to get an idea, if you can, of their expectations, but it's not critical. The loan question depends on the market that you're in. I remember in the Great Recession where over half of our sellers were underwater on their houses. That is, they owed more on the house than it was worth. It was very important to ask that question. Depending upon your market, depending upon the price range of the home and so on, you may or may not want to ask that question. It's there for you if you want to.
Guys, FYI, in the seller's disclosure, there is a question that asks about, is the home worth more than what's actually owed on it? So I forget what question it is on the seller's disclosure, but it's there. Probably not as much as something that you need to ask today, but let me tell you, many of us learned the hard way back in 08, 09, not answering that question or asking that question during the what he was calling the Great Recession. So that's why it's on the seller's disclosure now.
Ask it. Question number 14, what are 3 things you're looking for in a realtor? Listen very carefully, because you're going to want to make sure that you address those 3 things when you get together. Question number 15, are you interviewing any other realtors? And there's a spot there where you can write in if they give you the realtors' names. I would never ask the names of the realtors if they want to volunteer those. You have a spot that you can write it in. Mostly what I want to know is, do they have any other appointments set? And if they do, I would prefer to be the first appointment for 2 reasons. Number 1, if they like what I have to present, they may decide to list with me. Secondly, if they decide not to list with me because they have these other appointments, I want to set the bar so high that the other realtors will have to measure up to that. I want to be the standard by which the others will be compared. Question number 16, have you ever considered going for sale by owner? Ninjas are always asking me, why would you ask that question? Well, I like to ask it for 2 reasons. Number 1, I'd like to know. But secondly, I think it sets the stage for the kind of open and honest communication that we're going to have. Everything's going to be on the table. And so I like to ask that question. First of all, they're kind of surprised or shocked that I would ask that question. But I would like to be able to set the stage for the kind of open and honest communication that we're going to have. Now, once again, regardless of what they say in any of these questions, just write the answer down and go on. You're examining the patient. You're not performing surgery. So if they say they are considering going for sale by owner, don't launch into your for sale by owner presentation. Just write it down and go on. 17 is a great question on finding out.
Okay, usually I get a question at this point in time. Hey, Julie, tell me about for sale by owners. Like, how do I work a for sale by owner? That is a whole class on its own. And there's some great videos out there that I can share with you that show you how to work a for sale by owner. What I will just bottom line, if you remember anything without going into the videos, if you see a for sale by owner, just what Larry was saying here, do not launch into, hey, did you know that for sale by owners actually sell their house for 85% of what the market value actually is? Like, don't start telling them why they should not use an agent. Remember, they're not using an agent for a reason. They've already made that decision. So it's not the time to start hitting them with a lot of reasons why they should. So if anybody's interested in working for sale by owners, I can share with you some videos, talk to you through some things. I worked them when I first got in the business, my second year in the business, especially because I wanted listings. We had a ton of for sale by owners back then. We don't have as many in this market, interestingly enough. Surprise, surprise. That works well, I think, for us because they see the value in what it is that we do.
Their experience level. Have you sold a property before, and when was that? You know, if they sold a property during the Great Recession, it's very different than if they're selling a property in a multiple offer market. Question number 19, and this is critical how you ask this question. Do you have any questions of me so I can be prepared with the answers when we meet? Be sure to ask it that way, because one of the questions they may have for you is, yes, what is your fee? You say, let me jot that down. You have a question about fee. I'll make sure that I bring my fee schedule when we get together. If you leave that out about so I can be prepared for when we meet, they will press you for an answer right then. What I find is if you ask the question this way, very seldom will they press you on price, what we think the price of their home is, or what do you think, what is your fee at this point. If they do, you have to address it. But that won't happen if you ask the question just this way. Going over with them what happens next. At this point, you're going to have to make a decision on this. Are we going to do a one-call appointment or a two-call appointment? A one-call appointment is where you go out and meet with them and be prepared to list the house right there. A two-call appointment is where you go out and meet them, go through the home, and then set up a second meeting, usually at your office, where you actually go over the market analysis, the pricing, and list them.
That's pre-COVID, by the way. So usually not at your office.
House. What I find is top selling ninjas, some of them do only one calls, some only do two calls. Some of them say it depends on the situation. And what are some of the things it might depend upon? Well, it might depend upon the urgency of your seller. If they are a power personality and they want to get on with it right now, I would recommend that you do one call. If they're more of a perfection personality who likes to have lots of detail, they like to take their time, you may want to do two call. Or if it's an unusual property, it's very difficult to come up with a price. It's a custom home, for example. You may want to do a two call. But you need to let them know what is going to happen next. Here's what's going to happen, one call or two call. Then what you need to do is get into their hands your pre-listing packet prior to the meeting. So if you're doing a one call, you'll have the pre-listing packet delivered to their home or to their office. You'll ask for them to take a few minutes to look through it. It'll give them some information about the market, about your marketing plan, and about your company. If you're using a two call, you can simply take it with you on that first call.
Nah, deliver it ahead of time. In our market, any way you can get a fantastic, any way, anything, any action that you can do to get a fantastic first impression. I love Larry Hindle, but I'm all about get it there before your appointment.
And at the end of the call, say, I've prepared a packet of information for you. If you could take a moment and review this before we get together, it'll answer many of your questions. It'll also give you a good overview of the market and the services we provide and our marketing plan. At the very end, question number 22 is, if they called you because they were referred from a friend, then you want to suggest to them, if it's all right with you, I'd like to give John a call and thank him for referring you to me. Would that be okay with you? They'll really appreciate that. It shows the kind of professional that you are. If you follow these steps in the pre-listing interview, what we have found is you'll be much more prepared when you go out on the listing appointment itself. You'll list more houses and you'll get more houses sold. So you have the pre-listing interview with you, and we would recommend now that you take some time to rehearse. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. No, I'm not going to make everybody break out into groups and rehearse it today. That would take 30 minutes. But what I am going to highly suggest is that you get familiar with the questions that we have here. If you go to top producing agents, Like if I run downstairs to Jan Patrick's office right now, or I run downstairs to Brian Hadley's office, let me tell you that whoever is in their group has this list of questions somewhere. So whoever's answering the phone has this list of questions somewhere. They pull the sheet out and just start having that conversation with the seller. You don't have to cover everything in here. If you don't cover some of it, then you cover it at the pre-listing interview or at the listing interview. But I find you just start off with the first couple of questions about the when and the why are you moving and those kinds of things. Like the conversation just starts to roll. And again, it's about the conversation. It shows them that you have a process in play. It's just not willy-nilly. But the big thing I want you guys to take away from this is somebody calls, says they want to list a house. Your first inclination you're going to have is, well, when do you want me to come out? And I'm going to say, fight that like you would fight a bull in the streets of Madrid. Fight that inclination to say, when do you want me to come out? Because what will end up happening is you'll set up an appointment and you'll call your manager, just like Sal was saying, you'll call your manager, you'll have that stress pop in, like, what do I do now? And your manager is going to ask you some of these questions. Or I've had a couple of people who say, oh, I don't even know what their phone number is. I didn't get their email. I don't even know what kind of house they have, because you just went to set up the appointment. So fight that urge to set up the appointment and move to I need to ask some questions. If you set up the appointment prior to asking a lot of questions, you're not prepared for that presentation. You're so not prepared. And it shows when you get there and meet with the seller. But I'll share with you, most agents, that's exactly what they do. Even experienced agents out there are just set up the appointment and they wing it. There's no winging it in a listing appointment. There's no winging it. The more you know about their situation, why they're looking to move, their household, you can tailor your listing appointment to their situation. That's what'll get you listings. Absolutely what'll get you listings. So, questions, comments, thoughts, concerns. We've talked about a lot. I think the biggest thing that I keep thinking about, the more you can educate your seller about everything you're doing, and you can see there's a lot that goes on here with a listing. It's just not about putting the sign in, figuring out the right price. There's a lot to this, a lot to listing. All starts with a conversation, moves into a process. Into a process. Okay, what are we thinking, feeling right now, guys? Holy crap, buyers are so much easier. Not really. Everybody has their thing they like to work with. I love working on listings. I have always loved working on listings. I just have. I just feel like it just shows the value I bring to the table. It really does. Listings also, there's a saying out there, listings have legs. Meaning, when you get a listing, your next transaction is embedded, and probably two, are embedded in that listing. It gives you an opportunity to figure out where that next one was. So the return on your investment in listings is a lot higher than with buyers. You know, you're going to have to show probably quite a number of houses, and in this market, you're going to have to write quite a number of offers before one gets accepted. So first year in business, I tell her just get business. You know, your goal is to let everybody know your real estate. I think I worked with 11 buyers my first year in the market. One listing. My year two, I was like, I need listings. Like this, driving around, showing lots of houses and writing lots of offers and nothing to show for it was exhausting. So, you know, year two, I went after listings. We had a lot of for sale by owners, and I decided to work it, and I did. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it paid off. I can tie 9 transactions in the next 2 years to FSBOs. We don't have a lot of FSBOs right now, but if you have one or you see them, I see them more in Southern Chester County than I do in Delaware right now. But if you see them, you know, work them. But they take time. They take a lot of effort. It all starts with some conversations. starts with some conversations, and let them know you have a process. Explain to them the process. So, yeah. Yeah. A lot goes into selling a house. A lot goes in. So it's just not, it's getting to the settlement table on top of it. But asking a lot of these questions up front also helps you during the transaction. So if that challenge comes up with something didn't appraise, or, you know, can't believe they're buying out, or I'm not fixing that, you know, not so much in this market, but when we work in a balanced market and a seller's market, just reminding them about why they're looking to move is huge. You know, what's that emotional tug? So if you remember from Monday, Mrs. Pierce was about getting down to Ocean View and being with her grandkids. Yeah, I used it like you wouldn't believe. So, okay, Mrs. Pierce, we're going to quibble over $5,000. We got a great offer from this beautiful young couple, and we're going to quibble over $5,000 is going to keep you from being with your grandkids. Yeah, I used it. I used it. Well, that's not the point. Yeah, it is the point. It is totally the point, Mrs. Pierce. It's why you're selling. So if you're not with your grandkids in September when they're starting school and you're not picking them up off the bus, is that $5,000 going to mean a lot to you? Well, you know, no, not really. And I was like, well, then why are we making such a big deal about it right now? That market will come back. Now we just got to muddle through multiples. Muddle through the multiples. All right, we good? Okay. So digest the process today. Digest the process. I'll send you that PowerPoint. Get familiar with these questions so that when someone does call and they want to sell a property, like the questions just roll off your tongue. Just kind of roll off your tongue. Figure out what you're going to put in that pre-listing packet. You know, bottom line, some kind of market watch report. The KCM brochure is great things to put in there if they're looking to list sooner rather than later. See, I'm like sooner rather than later. Put in the seller's disclosures. You know, let them know it's their homework. That's how I put it. It's their homework. So on the left side is some information about the selling process. On the right side is your homework, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. When I get to the listing appointment on Saturday, whether it's a pre-list or whether it's a single list, you know, first time out, second time out, if that listing paperwork is filled out when I go into the dining room table or the kitchen table and it's sitting there filled out, guess who's got the listing? So it's also a great way of knowing where you are. Where you are. Well, we took a stab at it. We took a stab at it. We want you to take a look at it. That's like, Jewel, you got it. You got it, girl. You got it. Got it. So, good. The reason why I'm not a big fan of like go out, do the CMA all at once, you know, unless it has to be done. But keep in mind that toolkit CMA, that toolkit we have, a lot of brokerages have a very similar one. So you're just coming out with the same old that they have. We're trying to set you apart from everybody else. So use the tool the right way, customize it to who you have and the situation. Sometimes I don't even use it, or I just send it as a backup follow-up kind of thing. But if price is important to them, that's when the CMA really comes in. If process is important to them, how are you going to market the home, how are you going to get me through the multiple offers, then that's what I'm going to focus in on. Depends upon who I'm talking to. And that's why that question is, you know, tell me about your past selling experiences. What are your expectations from this? So are you really listening to that instead of just relying on that CMA document? And so many times that's folks just rely on that. I will share down in Kent and Sussex County, guys. A lot of them don't even use the CMA. They just go out with copies of the property descriptions, and that's what they give to people. Ugh. So you can just set yourself apart right off from the beginning with just doing something different than what everybody else is doing. It amazes me. It absolutely amazes me. And I go in there, I'm like, yeah, have you meeting with anybody else? Yeah, I met with them. So how was your conversation with the other agent? Oh, we reviewed these, and they pull them out, like they'll show me, they'll pull them out, they review these. I'm like, great. They didn't get to know you a little bit. What you're looking for. Now, some sellers, you know, you guys heard anybody who's worked in corporate America, I'm sure has done a personality test of some kind. Right? Yep. So y'all know what you are. Like I'm a high I with a high D, little bit of S and no C. Anybody do those DISC personalities? You know, D's demanding. I forget what I is, and you're typically extroverted. You know, S stands for stability and C stands for control. So D's are typically those, you know, leaders. Those people just get to the bottom line, get there really quickly, move on. I's are the party people, like to talk. Mm-hmm. A lot of you guys too, you know, really people. The D's are going to absolutely focus in on what price do you think we should list our house at. It doesn't mean you go in and immediately go in and start talking about what you list your price. You got to walk them through the process, but walk them through fast because you'll lose them fast. I just want to talk about all the marketing that you're going to do. And they're going to want to know from you, like, hey, are there any brochures that we can do? Hey, can I, you know, how do I share all this on social media? Like they'll be sharing all of your stuff. They'll be pulling it from your website, the property descriptions, all that. You know, let them share, let them be involved in that. They love it. They love it. What are you going to do to market my home? How's it going to look? How about the staging? So they're all about that. S's are more of that stability kind of folks. So you really got to handhold them through the whole entire process. They're usually Mrs. Seller who's selling the home that the kids grew up in. And all the memories are going, woo, bye-bye. You know, new stage of life. Just had one of those 2 years ago. We moved her down the beach. Just saw her 2 weeks ago. We had dinner with them. And honest to God, I was like, hey, remember when you were crying over the kitchen table? They're friends of ours. Remember you were crying over the kitchen table about moving to the beach? What do you think of that now? And she's like, oh, best move we ever made. What house up in Claymont? I'm like, yeah. So not that Claymont's a bad spot. It's really not. But they were ready to move on. The kids, one was getting married, kids moved out, blah, blah, blah. So needed to know that process. You educate them on the process. You go step by step. You hold their hand. You tell them it's all going to be all right. You got this. We got this. And then your C's are my brother-in-law, not the Giles brother-in-law, my sister's husband. He is, you know, he's the techie accountant kind of guy who wants to know what the price is, but he's going to talk about the process with me. He already has done his own super, super expansive Excel spreadsheet, including Zillow. And he's going to want to see how I came up with the price range for a property versus how he came up with it. So I'm going to have to walk him through it step by step. And lots of times I'll say to them, I was like, just out of curiosity, have you all put together an Excel spreadsheet looking at what the comps are? And if they go yes, you know you got a C on your hands. So you're going to have to walk through that part of the CMA with them. If you've got a D, don't walk through all the details of the CMA. Go right to that part in the CMA which shows the range. So tailoring your listing appointment to who you have. By going through this part in a pre-list, you kind of get a good idea of the type of personality that you have. That just solidifies you getting the listing. Okay, guys, we'll take some time again to digest all this. We'll move into on Monday, since Dave will be here with us tomorrow to talk more about all right, what's that paperwork, walking you through the actual listing contract. So kind of like what Sal did with you with the agreement of sale, we're going to do the same thing with the listing contract and the disclosures tomorrow. So I know that's the fun part. What I taught you today is not the fun part, but it is the part that will get you the listing. You can absolutely know all there is about the listing contract and the disclosures, but if you don't have anybody to do it with, not going to matter. Not going to matter. So we'll finish up with the 5 points of value and move into sellers' expectations next week. So all good? Good for listening to everything I had to say today. So thanks. Thanks. All right, well, stay dry. I see it's pouring down rain outside my window here. I'm not sure about where you are at. So have a great, fantastic day. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning with Dave.